Chapter 19. It is often said that the eyes are the windows of the soul. Frederick had operated his life generally using his eyes as observational tools, usually accompanied by words of judgment or correlating opinion. His eyes were never partial to internal judgment or opinion, a flaw that you may agree many of us tend to have. Learning to see as a child is a long forgotten and short but sore experience. However, learning to see as an adult can be one of the most challenging things a person can go through. Frederick, at this moment in time, was entirely blind. Guided by his ears and the motion of his surroundings, he was, to put it bluntly, helpless. It didn't make sense why his eyes were taken from him. None of it at all made sense. But this drew his intelligent mind to take a step not normal to him. He looked inward. I'm blind for a reason. I've not seen something, but what haven't I seen? Trying to assimilate the words repeated over and over by the people in his life, the black, holding his eyes under control, became scenes of vibrancy, and played out a third-person view of short scenes in his life. The short moments of his face in the mirror in the morning, the short walk to the station, the trade-off between him and Rita, the emptiness of watching others progress, his life unmoving but at the same time submissive to the master of time. Frederick had quickly figured out his blindness. However, even with eyes opened, he remained blind to the darkness and consumption of the deep sea and the crust of the earth. More scenes of his life lit up the depths of the darkness around him, and as he would, on the station platform, he would watch his life play out before him. More scenes of his life lit up the depths of darkness around him, and as he would on the station platform, he would watch his life play out before him. Becoming the judge of his own actions, the emotions unfolding from the man he watched was entirely clear. Frederick had long thought himself concealed under the mask of his competence, but watching him in sequences quickly exposed him. Watching himself in the same actions day in and day out described as routine, the decay of his own soul bled before him and filled him with an enlightened sadness he had never felt before. Frederick was starting to understand his blindness, and in part was grateful for this trial, as seeing this made him believe that this whole experience was real and wasn't just a dream, despite its dreamlike appearance. As a whole, it seemed as though watching himself and being blind was in some ways a puzzle, with himself being the image on the pieces. Putting them together, he would understand himself better, and hopefully, with intention, be better after the experience. I'm stuck. I don't move, I don't progress. Always in the same position at the same time, with no thought or feeling. I make judgments of the world around me, but I never place myself under that judgment. I do want to move forward. I do want to be better. Help me be better. The scenes in front of Frederick became still images and rippled away into the darkness of the deep sea. With a rumble beneath him, Frederick felt the tremble of the earth, and with it a large crack opened up the earth in slow progression, revealing the vibrant and contrasting colours of red and orange. flowing lava steaming the sea water above. It engrossed him in a dark and light grey that pulled him further into the earth. Reluctance and despair were a short description of his feeling, but it mattered not, as everything had taken control of him once more. Pulled in, the earth that had opened up had closed as it had opened, and surrounding him was the entirety of lava flowing in all different directions. The earth had entrances all around him, apart from the ceiling the earth had just created. The orifices of the earth bleeding out lava looked quite perverse, and even the shape of the earth followed the same manner. Frederick was floating in the centre of the obscene mess of nature around him. That was just the beginning? Fred was unsure how to feel about the trial not ending after that. But weirdly, he was looking forward to understanding the next part. Down below him was a platform of earth cut out as a circle. Surrounding the circle was a deep bubbling pool of lava and cementing crust. His body, with no intention of his own, slowly drifted down to the circle platform, and with childlike curiosity he drifted to the edge to see the distance between him and the lava. It measured at an arm's length. As he grasped the length of the lava away from his feet, an arm smothered in the burning and bubbling substance threw out a hand and grabbed the platform edge. Frederick stumbled back with surprise. The hand and arm was that of a woman, slender, and fingers that looked soft, that were untouched by the burning power that the lava possessed. The lava seemingly slithering off the arm, another arm appeared and gripped the platform, and slowly a forehead began to appear with eyes he had seen before. The glowing, lustful eyes of a woman he had watched before. Her body clad in lava, it slithered down, revealing naked skin. His eyes glistened at her, but you could see in his body language his immediate reaction was to calm himself through clenching of the fist and turning away of the face. He knew where this was going, or at least he knew what he would be facing. Despite looking away from her, she was still approaching him. She was a slightly taller woman with dark brown eyes that reflected the lava in her seductive glance. Her nose small and carefully crafted, it sat perfectly in the centre of her face. Her hair was long and pitch black, hanging under her shoulder blades. It stayed together with straight groups of hair hanging along the side of her breasts. Her figure was slender and toned, all equally made to balance out her image. Her voice was empty, but it was clear she was talking to him, trying to entice him, but as he already knew, she had already enticed him once before. In fact, she had enticed him many times. With her eyes and her body, the movements of her sexual desire had already controlled him and the impulse of the male reproductive system. Fred had turned from her, but his eyes drew upon another figure pulling itself up onto the platform. This one, following the same body type, had blonde hair and eyes a light crystal blue. That instantly stole his attention. The naked body of women was always a weakness for him, as it is for many men. But when all was said and done, the eyes were always something Fred would look at. Her blue eyes immediately flashed the scenes of erotic behaviour into his mind. He looked to the ground in hopes that this would just disappear, but it earned no results. It didn't take long before more women left the lava and entered the space of the circle platform, all following the same seductive behavior and lack of clothing. Fred's body was bordering on being aroused. He wished for the blindness he had earlier, but he knew that would never occur. Fortunately, he soon found out that these women could not touch him, but as they discovered that they could not do such a thing, they began to team up in efforts to seduce him, or at least make him fall into the depravity of which secretly held a hold over him behind closed doors. The challenge was clear, but how to endure this, or at least overcome it, was bewildering to him. Was he outright to state rejection of this impurity around him, or was he to accept that he suffers from the temptation of the skin? Most men, if not all men, suffer this affliction, but is that just an excuse? The platform beneath him began to crack, and the women parading around him in erotic behavior fell back into the lava. However, this time, with the power to touch him, they dragged him in with them. Entering lava was never something Fred wanted or even thought about doing, as it certainly meant death. But closing his eyes, fear had lost its presence. The lava was a floating layer, masking an underneath cavern, with yet more lava descending and ascending its way through the earth's many crevices. Strangely, the women who had dragged him into the lava had vanished. The cavern below was dark, and the heat from the lava boiled the air, making him feel as though his body temperature had risen through breathing alone. He floated to the earth below, and in front of him lava flowed down into 4 black holes in the ground beneath. Like flat-screen televisions, they played out his moments of lust and self-pleasure. Watching himself in such a state made him feel ashamed, showing him the moments and ideas in his brain as they went from grabbing a beverage from the kitchen, seeing his neighbour's wife's body, and then reaching for his laptop to seek out pleasure. It seemed merely looking at a woman was enough to trigger such depravity, and re-watching this behaviour allowed him to see how pointless and self-destructive it actually was. Frederick, at this point, took a moment to establish this trial's meaning, and it was becoming clear. He felt that his person was being broken down, displayed before him to right the wrongs, or at least understand them. It also seemed to him that this trial was completely out of his control. No answer was right or wrong, but the flow of the trial existed through seeing and wanting a pursuit of understanding. From this small assumption, his whole outlook changed on everything. Rather than focusing on what the trial was suggesting or showing, he was ready to point inwards at himself. The lava and earth around him shifted and formed into many variations of women's genitals. Fred looked at the suggestive forms in a different perspective. They served as a reminder of his behaviour, and with understanding they held no arousal power over him. Out of the orifice of the genitals, women with no faces but naked bodies ran out and towards him. It looked more like a scene from a horror movie, and inspired fear more than staring eyes. They surrounded him in a flurry of waving arms and jiggling flesh. Fred closed his eyes and protected his head in a crouch, but it was pointless, as their attempts to hit him or do anything to him was stopped by what seemed to be a barrier surrounding him. This barrier was not visible to the eye, But as a faceless woman tried to brutally force her breasts into his face, they were paused 2 inches away, as if hit by a window. It had hit the point where Fred was becoming annoyed by the presence of nude women. They said nothing, only furiously tried to touch him in some manner. The thought had crossed his mind that if the barrier wasn't there, he may have been in a different kind of heaven, but it was precisely that thought that encouraged him to pause in self-reflection. Fred was stuck, or so he had thought. He tried standing, which proved to be easy, as the barrier surrounding him moved the nude women and their floundering body parts out of the way. Then, moving with one leg at a time, he slowly began to walk towards one of the orifices that the women came through. He didn't know if the direction he was moving in was the right one. He didn't even know if ignoring the situation he was in was the right answer. But he knew he had to keep moving. With the challenge of this trial unwinding, Fred could gracefully see that this was only the beginning.